And welcome back to episode 172 of the Weekly Tech Rant with me, Jay.
And me, Karl.
Oh, I appear to have, I think, the worst dose of hay fever this summer already. I've had enough. I've got a sore throat now. I've got kind of weird, summery cold thing going on. Oh man, this is not a good week for what I wanted to.
What are you talking about? Summer is over. We've had those 3 days of blistering heat.
I was going to say, we've gone from heat wave in the UK to what I can only describe now as slightly cold.
Very windy. Winter is coming.
Yes, winter is nigh. Well, we are back then for this week's lineup of the latest tech news and stories. And, you can tell it's summer because it's getting a bit thin on the ground, isn't it, with some of the big stories.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about Apple and Apple's latest run-in with the EU. Let's be honest, you knew that was coming. We're going to talk about a bit of a thing around encryption. Again, this has been a running theme for probably about a couple of years now. And
yes,
governments trying to block end-to-end encryption on consumer side applications and products rather than obviously government level encryption. We're going to talk about SpaceX and not what you think we're going to talk about with SpaceX. This is slightly different. Though, did you see they landed again 2 boosters side by side after launching? Yeah, so they launched I think it was NASA's latest weather or geostationary satellite, and it was the Falcon Heavy with the 2 side boosters, and they landed them simultaneously back down on it does not get old,
It's a masterclass, isn't it?
It is.
Land rockets. Everyone else was paying attention.
Well, unlike the Chinese this week, who launched a rocket and then dropped the fuel tank back down on the civilian populace, wasn't it?
Again, because this is not the first time.
No, with hypergolic fuel, isn't it? Basically,
that's the one. The one that's really, really nasty.
Yeah, really nasty. Anyway, I digress. We're going to talk about the Department of Homeland Security and their top security priority for FY25, 2025. And the tech rat rumor mill is overflowing this week with a whole load of rumors sat there in the bucket. But yeah, what a week it's been. We've been fiddling a lot this week, haven't we, with chat applications and trying to roll our own chat server.
We have.
With not much luck, I would argue.
We've had a mix, haven't we? We've had some that look promising, but we couldn't quite get to work. Some that we get to work, but just look like, I don't know, AOL Messenger from 1990 something or other.
That was really old. I mean, that application, you're right, AOL Messenger was exactly what the look of it was. Now you say
it is. I have built another one based on Matrix, which is like a federated system. Not that I'm planning to federate, just would keep it private, but I'm having some issues, but it is very promising. So yeah, maybe we'll keep you tuned on that one once we get up and running. We may ditch Teams and move over to that.
Oh yeah, but see, and this is all linked to this particular announcement we'll talk about in a minute, which has now been rolled back.
Yeah,
but gives us some indication. Got us thinking around encryption and got us thinking around personal communication. Not that we're doing anything dodgy, I might add. I just want to.
Yeah, we're not terrorists. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, first. Anyway, talking of not terrorists, let's talk about somebody who is upsetting the EU this week. Then, and of course, it's Cupertino.
Yes.
So the Digital Markets Act is fully up and running, and Apple, of course, were a little bit slow to get things going in terms of rolling out the app stores, weren't they, and everything they needed to do to comply with the DMA. And they've been doing that now for what? About 6 months, isn't it? Probably about that.
Yeah, as a designated gatekeeper, they call them, don't they? So it's Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, sorry. But yeah, was it 6 of them who are gatekeepers? Yes, but Apple particularly were one, especially to do with the App Store. I mean, they weren't a gatekeeper for messaging, were they? That got taken off. But yeah, certainly around the App Store, and they are one of the DMA's first victims, shall we say? So yeah, the EU Commission has basically ruled that Apple's App Store steering policies violate the EU's DMA. So they could potentially have a fine. Or was it up to 10%? So based on last year's numbers, $38 billion, and go up to 20%. So what's that? Nearly $80 billion for a repeat infringement.
That's a lot of money, isn't it? And this case was opened on the 24th of June by Margaret Vestager, who was quite. I almost want to say she was quite proud of the fact that saying we open a new case and we've got preliminary finding. But I mean, so. Yeah, this is all around the app steering. And let's be honest, we saw this coming. It was going to happen, wasn't it? Apple's implementation of the app steering and allowing developers to not keep you within that walled garden, allow you to come out of that, isn't it? To do payments, to do applications, for stores. The implementation that Apple did with the third-party app stores.
But this is different from the third-party app stores, though.
Yeah,
this
no,
is the steering,
that was the one I thought they were going to get. That was the one I thought they were going to go with them on. But
they did announce they're looking into that, especially around the core technology fee for using third-party app stores, aren't they?
Yeah, and as you're right. So this app steering piece that the EU has decided. The competition chief, isn't it? Margarita has said. I think she was quoted as not what expected of such a company. Sorry, I think you've misunderstood Apple here.
Do you know Apple? Yes, but app steering is to do with. So, say you use Spotify, YouTube. If you use Apple's own payment processing and that kind of stuff, you could pay 30% of whatever you're charging the user. Now, obviously, they want to say, well, why didn't you go sign up on our website? Which you can do, but they weren't allowed to say that in the app, were they?
No.
Or even they weren't allowed to say it, and they certainly weren't allowed to click a button that says "click here to pay somewhere else." But obviously, the EU
frowned upon.
Yes, exactly. The EU Digital Markets Act said, "Nope, that's not allowed." They're meant to be freely allowed to go and tell you where to buy it somewhere else, or click a button to take you somewhere else to buy it. But it has to be separate from the app itself, because that's a separate case, and that's to do with third-party app stores and payment processing. Apple, as usual, have made it a bit more difficult, haven't they? Wasn't quite as straightforward as just slapping a button in there or a link or telling you, was it? You had to, get, I can't remember what they called it now. Not a token, but you had to apply for some kind of something in the app to do it.
That's right. There was a whole raft of steps that Apple were making you, or hoops they were making you jump through. That's a better way of describing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're right. This came in 17.4. So back in March. So it's been a while there now. And obviously, as we get towards iOS 18, these changes need to be embedded properly in the whole of the app infrastructure, the app environment. And you're right, they haven't done it. And it's taken this they call it through the core fee technology, was it CFT, which is what the
core fee technology is around the app stores, not around the steering.
No, and that was one of the things that they had to change as well. And the whole steering thing as well, I think, is just going to be that snowball that starts off small and rolls down the hill, and they're going to pick up everything else here that Apple have done. And the fine here, as you say, could be huge, isn't it? It could be, isn't it? Up to 5%. Is that the fine?
10% for your first infringement.
But it's daily turnover as well.
I'll just global revenue. That's what I've got. So 10%, 38 billion. And then up to 20% for a repeat infringement. And that's on each of these things. So that could be 10% for the steering and 10% for the core technology fee.
That's what I mean. And don't forget, they were fined, wasn't it, 2 billion previously by the EU, as we talked about, that predated all of the DMA stuff. So this is not a first offence. Well, it's a first offence under the DMA, but it's not a first offence with the same...
With the EU.
With the EU for the same problem. And Apple, of course, Apple were quoted as saying that they're confident that, they comply with the DMA and everything's fine. But apparently...
Technically they comply, but not with the spirit, I'm sure. But
no, but apparently...
You can't enforce the spirit.
Well, no, wouldn't that be easy? I don't know if you saw, though, but apparently earlier this month, Japan passed a similar law.
I did, yes.
Stating that there now has to be, obviously, same antitrust impacts in Japan, so that there has to be additional app stores there as well.
Yep, definitely. I think it's happening everywhere now. Blood is in the water.
It is, and how long before it's no longer everybody outside the US? It's basically the standard effect of here, third-party app stores are here. We can't do anything about it.
I imagine that Apple will still hold out, even though they can. Okay, everyone outside the US, you've got third-party app stores, blah blah blah. They'll hold out in the US because it is a huge market. It's their home market.
Well, but there's a lot of things, isn't there? They've opened out of the home market. Because remind me on a simpler note, didn't the last two generations of iPhones in the US come without SIM
They
slots.
did, yeah. They were, they're all eSIM, I think, or
So
certainly
they're
the
all
pros are.
eSIM. But again, everyone outside of that, they've kept the physical SIM cards. This kind of, again, you're starting to build a two-tier system here with the devices and the hardware
It
and the
is,
software. I mean,
but then I think if you look at Samsung, it's quite the same. If you look at like their S Ultra range or whatever, they even have different CPU chips, don't socks, depending on where you are in the world. And that's not just for the modem. It's, I think, if you're in America, you might get a Qualcomm chip. If you're somewhere else, you might get one of Samsung's own Xenos chips or whatever they call them, which is still very odd.
yeah. But I think when I'm reading through this, though, I think to come back to the point of the DMA, I do think that Apple have made this exceptionally difficult for themselves, and the EU are going to pull them apart because, if I recall, they've got how many different sets of business terms now, isn't it? That basically as a developer you can sign up for. There's no standard set. There's different models, isn't there? That whether you how you deploy the applications. That
Yep.
originally it was a flat fee or not flat fee, but there was one developer contract, wasn't there? Effectively,
Yes.
and now they've got three of them. I think it was two or three. I can't remember exactly. And there are different sets of fees. You've got the free applications as well that get to that point if you have over, X number of downloads, isn't it? You then start paying for them. This is so, I know Apple are trying to make money here, but I think what they're doing is they're creating such a situation that laws are going to be written around this, and the DMA is a great example of that Apple are trying to not out-regulate the DMA, but they're trying to kind of build I almost want to say like a wall around it, isn't it? With different levels of I can't say the word obfuscation.
Yeah.
To kind of stop you getting there. And the EU are just going to cut through it, and they're just going to keep finding them.
Yeah.
And
It
I
sounds
wonder
very
what.
much like Microsoft licensing, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does. What do you want?
You need
Well,
a lawyer to understand it, or a team of lawyers.
yeah, what license do you want? Well, we've got E1 to whatever. Yeah, but I just want that. Oh no, but we reckon you should buy this because it gets bundled with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, you can't do that. You're going to need this, and that.
Yeah. Oh, and it's cheaper if you take this. Yeah, but I'm not using that. It doesn't matter. You've got it anyway.
But we could sell you an E5, and this will make it all go away. But you might need some add-ons to that E5.
Yeah, and I think Apple and their developer contracts are going to be the undoing, I think, of some of the issues here. And
yeah, I mean, it used to be all very simple. You pay your $99 or whatever it was for an Apple developer thing. You're on the store. You pay a cut. But then I suppose that's what they're trying to do. You had it simple. You didn't want it simple. This is now what you've got.
yeah, but I think it's almost like, I know they're trying to protect their
They're
install.
trying to prove a point.
They're trying to prove a point, and they're trying to protect the bottom line. And look, I love Apple as a company. Talk about success stories. Apple is a model, isn't it? It's a textbook for a company of how it grew and it failed, and they came back,
Yep.
and But I think Apple has a serious issue in that it does believe it's above.
Well,
Not
it
necessarily
does.
the law.
All companies, especially public traded companies, their sole purpose is to make money for the shareholders. We can't
Yeah.
forget that. So at the end of the day, while they do talk about privacy and all this kind of fluffy consumer stuff, they're still there to make money.
But I do think with Apple though, there is almost a sense that they maybe not publicly see it, but they kind of feel that they are bigger than government.
Well, yeah, and that comes along when you build a cult following, isn't it?
You build a cult following, and also your monetary value is more than the GDP of large countries.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have got this massive cult following, then you start to think, oh, I'm good. I'm not God, but you know what I mean. We're awesome, and that kind of gets then ingrained in you, and it's kind of, I suppose, negative feedback, really.
Well, I mean, look, here's a really unlikely scenario, but imagine tomorrow if Apple said, you know what, we're pulling the plug on iOS, and we're not going to
can't bother with this anymore.
It's it. From December 31st, 2024. Basically, that's it. We're not going to update anything. That's it. We're walking away from this. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Yeah, I've had enough. I'm closing down the company.
That's it. We're not going to make phones. We're not going to do anything like that. We're going to build computers. You install what you want on them, basically.
Yeah.
I know, highly unlikely. Not going to happen. But
yeah, exactly.
What there's nobody going to fill that void straight away. And don't give me old Samsung would leap into it. No, they wouldn't. It's not that simple, is it?
It's not.
You would. There is such an ecosystem there that would crumble. And I think you've got to look at the whole BlackBerry thing, how that the fallout from that. This would be 10 times that.
Yeah. It's not just the consumer. Think of all those government entities that are using iPhones for the security and encryption and all that kind of stuff, and now go, great, we've got unsupported devices now. What do we do? No security patching, nothing like that.
No. But there you go. Look, round up scenario, but yeah. So kind of moving left field here a bit. Let's talk a bit more about security and talk about, again, this is a subject that came up some months ago, which was around forcing companies to scan the messaging technology. So let's talk about iMessage. Let's talk about any of the other messaging services out there.
WhatsApp. Basically any end-to-end encrypted messaging signal is a big one.
Yeah. So there was a recent proposal, wasn't it, from the EU that was going to call upon messaging companies, applications to scan outgoing messages for content that could be in the form of CSAM, which is child sexual abuse, isn't it? Material. So, first off, absolutely 100% behind stopping the distribution and creation of this, terrible, terrible material that harms children, families, and beyond. So, look, no issues there. But what this is in disguise is a mechanism for governments to break end-to-end encryption on those apps, isn't it, ultimately? And I think the whole CSAM piece that we talked about months and months and months ago was again a great example of how organizations, particularly governments, do not get the point of end-to-end encryption, isn't it? You can't have one or the other. And this proposal, let's say, was put up by the EU, but also there was Australia also apparently was going to look at a similar legislation.
Oh, we've been through that with the UK, haven't we? This kind of thing rears its ugly head every couple of years, and fingers crossed, so far we've not had to implement it. But you're right; you'll use the think of the children as a way to get their foot in the door of breaking encryption. And they love encryption for themselves, but it's just something that gets in the way of them doing the job for anything else.
It is, and I think look, we absolutely agree that there should be no way of distributing this terrible material. And do you remember we had the whole thing with Apple, didn't we? That Apple a couple of years ago, no, I think it was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Came up with a solution that they said that they were going to do their own scanning on this. But they were going to do it on their side, on the server side, so they didn't break any encryption, and it was all contained within the Apple.
No, it was doing it on the device side, wasn't it?
Sorry. Apologies. That's what I meant. It was all contained on the device.
So scan before it's sent.
Scan before send. It wouldn't break anything. But there was a lot of concerns around false positives. There was concerns around the misuse, wasn't there? And of course,
once you can do it for CSAM, you can. Well, once you built the mechanism, you can do it for anything you want.
Yeah, exactly. So your point was, so Apple backed down and said that, what, great idea, but this isn't the right time or the technology to implement this. And as you mentioned as well, the UK did it as well, didn't they? But then Apple challenged the UK because they said, right, you do that, you implement this new law, we're going to pull iMessage from the UK, wasn't it?
But technically, it's still in force in the UK, but there was a proviso put on the messaging part that basically said until it was technically feasible, but it still actually is in the bill.
Yeah, but this is the point. So but the EU one though the EU one was there was going to be a vote a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? That was going to amend a bit of legislation that was coming in that was going to require messaging companies, and particularly two that were called out were WhatsApp, weren't they? A Signal, to do exactly what Apple were going to implement, but on a server side around scanning for that material.
Yes.
But interestingly, though, it never got through the draft legislation because several companies abstained, didn't they, or opposed it?
Yeah, basically, it didn't have enough support to be brought to the vote, so they've canned that or delayed it, kicked it down the line again.
And interesting, some of the countries that were Germany, Austria, Poland, the Netherlands, and Czech Republic all apparently were going to either abstain or oppose over concerns from privacy or security standpoint. Now, look, is this common sense prevailing here? Are we got actually,
Like to hope so.
because I find a lot of the time here that there just doesn't appear to be the industry level knowledge or briefing to the politicians to help them make the decisions here. This is half the time, isn't it?
I'm not even sure if it's that. I suspect that, like the UK one, the politicians were fully briefed on basically this was impossible. You can't have it both ways. But they went, now you know what, we still want it, make it work, not our problem.
Yeah, which is, as we all know, is always the way to do it.
Anything with IT, it's just get it done. Not a problem.
Yeah, it'll be fine. We can do that. This whole thing about encryption now, I think, is going to be a moot point very soon, because how long before we get to quantum level encryption? We are not realistically, we're not that far off in the grand scheme of things, are we? That before quantum level encryption becomes a reality, and when we get to that stage, then what do you do? Granted, quantum level encryption is going to break existing encryption algorithms. That is a given.
Yeah.
But are we going to see then other companies? Let's take Apple as an example. Let's say quantum computing becomes feasible in the mainstream. A company that size is able to be an early adopter, of course. Are they going to leverage that capability to encrypt their messaging services? I bet you they are.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They've already been working on quantum resistant encryption.
So, then what do we do? Then you're into almost some kind of crypto warfare, and I don't mean from a Bitcoin perspective, of trying to break this stuff. I mean, I know, look, going down a kind of a weird tangent there, but I think, at some point this is going to have to be thrown to the wayside, because, you could argue they don't need the legislation, because if the governments take up quantum computing, rich companies will, won't they? Yeah. Let's say the US definitely is going to have that capability. China will at some point. Who cares? As long as your service isn't running it, they're going to be able to break it wide open. And I know, again, that's not happening today, and I know that's not really the point, but it just kind of it is a future scenario that is not implausible.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this one will go.
Yeah, but given now that the EU are backing down, and I think your point is right, though. This will rear its head again, exactly like the UK one.
Let's check back in 2 years, and there'll be another bill on the cards somewhere within the EU or whatever, trying to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's change the subject.
It'll play out exactly the same way. It'll be the exact same thing. Let's think of the children. It's the same every time. How about we concentrate on stopping that stuff being taken in the first place rather than distributing?
Well, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Fair point. Well, anyway, let's change this. Let's change the subject and talk about something a little bit more less depressing, I guess. And so the ISS. We love space on this show. Absolutely love space. Yes. I mean, I turn around and look at my Lego shelf here. I've got Saturn V.
All the space Lego.
I've got the Hubble Space Telescope and the shuttle, and hopefully we'll have the Artemis, the Orion SLS at some point. Fingers crossed. So talking of the ISS, though, so the ISS, International Space Station, has been permanently crewed for 24 years. Did you realise that? It's been 24 years.
What, 2020, wasn't it? Or somewhere around there?
2020,
2000, I should say. Sorry, 2000, not 2020.
Like, hang on, did we just jump into a time warp? But they started building it in the late 90s, and around 98, the first sections were launched. Space Shuttle came into its own. The whole thing, what the Space Shuttle was originally designed for, to help build a space station and put it into place, was done. It's now up there, and it's huge, isn't it? I think it's the size of a US football field. It's massive, permanently crewed, as we say.
430 tons.
That's a lot of stuff. And it's crewed by a mixture of countries, particularly obviously the US, Europe, Canada,
Russia,
Japan, and Russia, of course. And amazingly, the Russians are still involved. Despite everything that's going on, we've still managed to have cooperation with Russia from a space perspective, which I think actually is good. Let's be honest. We won't go into that story about the head of Roscosmos, will we? The crazy guy. But
no. Windows are dangerous, children.
But like all good things, everything has to end, doesn't it? At some point,
it does.
And somehow, Elon Musk has got involved with the death of the ISS. Now, let's be clear: the ISS is not dead yet, but of course, at some point, it will become end of life.
It's fully funded up to at least 2030, isn't it?
So what? Another 5 years or so, roughly.
Yeah, so we suspect sometime after 2030, and probably that decade there, that it will be decommissioned, because NASA hopes at that point that commercial space stations are being built or even in operation. So it no longer needs to do it. It can kind of then concentrate on its gateway project orbiting the moon.
Okay, let's just, before we go there, do you genuinely disbelieve, that there will be commercial launch capability at that point within 5 years, or at
No.
least, or let's say, well, I don't believe there will be. Not that I don't think we're capable of doing it, but I don't think we're at that stage yet.
From a commercial point of view, what's the return on investment for building a space station?
Well, yeah,
a moon base, I can see, mining for whatever the feasibility of that is, but there's some value out of it. I can't see for SpaceX what the value is of building an ISS.
No.
You won't make that much money from the scientific stuff.
And there were companies. So do you remember? I don't know if you ever remember. Do you remember Bigelow Industries?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
they came up with the concept in the 2010s.
Were they the inflatable ones?
Yes, I was going to say. So that was meant to have launched, but it never did. They came up with another one that was meant to start launches in 2016 and go into operation 2017, 2018, and would have 4 of these modules, and it never happened. No. But there is currently a Bigelow module connected to the ISS at the moment.
Okay.
Which was an inflatable module which is there connected, but it's not got any further. And you're right, SpaceX haven't gone any further. I don't see anybody else building it, and I think they'd have to have some funding from the government to make that a reality. So for SpaceX to do it, I think they would have to be right. We'll sign a contract with you, SpaceX, to use that as a jumping off point for the moon, etc., and you could do it. And let's be absolutely fair here. I don't see any challenges, at least in the grand scheme of things, for them to be able to do that. They've got the launch capability. They know they can put heavy loads into orbit. It would be a case of launching the initial module, wouldn't it, on a Falcon Heavy or whatever, launching that up there, then sending up a Dragon, I suppose, or something to connect with it to get people on it, and then start building it that way. So SpaceX, I imagine, is probably absolutely feasible for them. But before they do that, they've got one job to do, that, haven't they, SpaceX?
They've got to give the ISS a push into our atmosphere to mostly burn up, haven't they? So they say they did win the contract, or NASA has given them the contract to basically build a kind of tugboat, so that when the time comes, they can push ISS straight into destabilize its orbit, push it into our atmosphere. So most of it's going to burn up, but not all of it, as I said. So they have to plan this so the bits that are not likely to burn up will touch down in the Pacific Ocean, in an area known as Point Nemo, they're calling it, aren't they? Basically, a deserted area in the Pacific Ocean, so that we don't have a China instance where we're just dropping stuff on our own population.
Yeah, so this is, as you say, it's a point in the ocean which is furthest away from any landfall, and it's known as what's called the longest swim problem. So it basically would be that the problem is that if you've placed in the world where if a person fell overboard in a ship, they'd be as far away from any land in any direction possible. What a crazy problem! So I think it's 2,500, nearly 2,700 kilometers from any other landfall, and that is quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently that point. Yeah, apparently, at some points, the closest human beings to that are the people in the ISS when they fly.
Really? Because they're closer, straight up.
Yeah, because they're 400 kilometers or 250 miles straight up. They're closer than people. That's it.
Wow.
So you're right. That's where they drop a lot of space. So this SpaceX tug or deorbit vehicle, as it's officially known, will push the space station into that orbit and drop it into the ocean there as well, which I think is going to be a really sad day. Because, like you, I mean, we grew up.
Yeah.
We grew up watching.
I remember it being built.
watching it being built in launches and that, and the space shuttle and everything. And now it's standard. It's commonplace.
It was our moment. You know, we were not old enough to see the space race and launching all those rockets initially and landing on the moon, but this was our moon landing, wasn't it? This was the ISS being put up in space and being built, and most of the world cooperating on something.
It is. It'll be a sad day when it happens, but yeah, definitely interesting for SpaceX. But I guess they need to get those Starship launches done as well.
They do.
That would be quite helpful.
And a mission to Mars.
Right then, let me fire up the TechCrunch Rumor Mill.
You've jumped the gun.
Oh yes, I have.
You've missed our whole story.
Whoa! Rewind. Sorry, hang on a minute. Right, sorry, back it up. Okay, sorry. Yes, before we jump into the rumor mill, quickly put the rumor mill away. Back. Yes, so this is a bit of a kind of interesting. We'll talk about security risks. There was a story this week in The Verge that talked about the Department of Homeland Security in the US.
Yep.
So, if you're not familiar with the Department of Homeland Security, this was a new department that was created some 20 odd years ago, wasn't it? After during the post 9/11 situation. Well, basically, it was in response to the September 11th attacks, and now it is pretty much, I guess, one of the biggest departments in the US, and it has quite a large remit, doesn't it, to secure public security, and is kind of equivalent. If you take the UK, it would be kind of equivalent to the Home Office in the UK that runs police, doesn't it? Runs everything about the UK. But the DHS in the US has just released a memo which is outlining what its biggest priorities are for 2025 in terms of protecting the US
national security.
And lo and behold, the largest risk to the US, they reckon in 2025 is, I quote, combating cyber and other threats posed by the People's Republic of China.
Yes,
which is quite a statement.
It is. I mean, we all know it, but it's interesting to see them actually state it. Because usually they've kind of not been straight out, it's China we're worried about. They'll kind of beat around the bush. But yeah, interesting for them just to come straight out and go, we're worried about China and cybersecurity.
And when they say this, they're talking about the whole limit. They're talking about this is not just, China are going to attack us with cybersecurity. This is actually saying that they believe that there are massive risks to the infrastructure of the US. From again in the statement from the DHS secretary, from banking to electrics, for healthcare to water, across the whole of national security infrastructure. So public safety is at risk, economic security as well, but also they're looking at risks that are coming from new emerging technologies, particularly AI, which I think, again, and also I thought was quite interesting, and one particular for me was the risk that they have on the dependency of satellite-based communications.
It's I don't know how they're gonna rely less on that. I mean, satellite-based services, especially things like GPS, are pretty important.
Well, if you were to take out satellite infrastructure now, most things would fall apart, particularly power grids. Communications would go down. I've just read a really, really good book, a terrifying book. It's called The Nuclear Scenario, by Annie Jacobson, who is a Pulitzer-winning journalist who's written many books around the CIA and other things. And this is a non-fiction book. Rephrase. It's a fictional story based on non-fiction truths and declassified information about a nuclear war happening in the near future, which I know sounds terrifying, but it kind of is set around that North Korea launches a ballistic missile at America.
Right.
And it's, set, let's just say, in current times based on the information. But what happens then is a chain of events that ends up with America launching at North Korea, then Russia launching because they think America's launching at them, and then the US retaliating against Russia, and effectively what you've just done is World War III.
Would you like to play a game?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thermonuclear war.
Yeah, and guess what? Nobody wins.
Of course, they would.
And it's quite terrifying in it. But one of the things that happens in there is that North Korea launches another missile into space and creates a EMP strike above the US.
Right. Okay. Yep.
And of course, that EMP strike takes out all satellites and everything on the ground.
Mm.
And of course, you wouldn't need to launch anything else at that point, because if you put an EMP, you would absolutely destabilize the whole of the.
But that wouldn't really take out the satellites? Satellites go in an orbit. Yes, it would take out the satellites surely in that vicinity when the EMP
Yeah,
goes off.
but
The
but
EMPs
also
only last seconds.
true, but you also take out.
They're taking out the base stations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's it. You've taken out the base stations, and you've got no communication for satellites, so that you've got
but
nothing you can do with them.
I mean, I would argue our base stations not shielded from EMPs.
Well, this is interesting, and the book goes into a lot of detail into this, and actually, they're not shielded as you think they would be.
No.
Given the level of strike that comes down, there's only so much. But this is also coupled with nuclear strikes as well, hitting key targets. But I digress. But I think the point here from this view is that you're right, is the dependence on the Chinese. The dependence on satellite technology.
Yeah.
But they also talk about what they call the other malign grey zone activities, which is around the Chinese investing in US organizations, yes. Kind of buying your way in, traditional espionage, and of course insider threats. So whilst all of the cyber stuff's great, they also consider that that there is that human element as well, which they're going to deploy here. And it was very eye-opening that the document is quite large. It goes into a lot of details. This is also off the back of another report that was published in 2022 around what they call the Strategic Action Plan on combating China's threats to U.S. national security. But I just think it was really telling that they've come out and made this very clear. This is their biggest threat, and of course, there's a real love. I don't know if love hate is the right word, but there's a real kind of back up against the wall, isn't it, with China at the minute?
Yes. We hate you, but begrudgingly we'll deal with you.
Yeah, and I think the whole Taiwan situation is not helping, and of course, China potentially has the power to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine through their relationship with Russia, and I don't think that's happening as well. But but again, this was just a very interesting point, and we obviously in this show we love to talk about cybersecurity and particular issues there. And again, I think this is a very telling document that's going to, I don't know, set the scene for the future, and obviously perhaps bring a lot more light on what is going to happen between the US and China, which in this day and age, it's not Russia that's their biggest concern, is it? It is definitely China in this new Cold War.
Yeah.
We have. Okay, right.
Press the
button.
Now
I press the button. Right then, what have we got then in the rumor mill this week?
The first story, I'm going to file this under, sounds very cool, but I'm not sure we're actually going to see it. So Apple have applied for a patent on a swappable high-tech rear cover for smartphones. The idea being that you can clip these covers on and they give you extra functionality, larger batteries being an obvious one, more sensors, health monitoring, cameras, even auxiliary displays on the back of your iPhone. So cameras, in a document they break it down into first one for cameras, and there are kind of 2 points you have to kind of see here. So first one is obviously these cases would need cutouts to allow the current cameras to go through, but more interestingly, you can add an extra camera, bigger sensors, optical, image stabilizing, all kind of stuff. So I think we've seen this before, where you could add a bigger camera to the back of a phone. Obviously not an iPhone. Android devices there, but it'd be interesting to see that come to an iPhone. Maybe give you a 20 times optical zoom and a bigger maybe SLR kind of style sensor there.
I think it's quite a cool idea. And also, I mean, look at other things. Think of POS situations, or in a hospital where you could have, like you say, the sensors and stuff like that. You could clip on and connect to other technologies.
Yeah, they do mention a glucose monitor, don't they? So you have those. You do a finger prick, don't you? You put the blood on the paper stick, and maybe having a way for that device there to ingest that or whatever, and tell you what the output is.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I think the idea is very cool, and I think what was that Android phone the one where you could swap all the modules out of it. I can't remember
Was
which one
it
it was.
the? Oh God, it was the one all made of ceramic stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
could.
but
I can't remember what it's called now. One something was
I
it?
think it
No, it
was.
was
I
not
can't
One
remember.
Plus. I can't remember who it was.
No, but it was a very cool
It
phone.
was the
That could do
original
very
Android
similar
guy,
stuff.
wasn't it? Andy Rubrick or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I know
Yeah,
you mean. Yeah,
yeah, he did
but
one
yeah.
like that. But again, a lot of these people. This is not the first time by a long shot that we've seen
Oh
this.
God, no, no.
But they've never really worked, have they? I mean, actually, another one was Red. The people that make the cameras, didn't they? They did the Red phone, and you could slap camera attachments on the back, and it just went nowhere.
I look, like you said, I don't think this is going anywhere. I think what we might see though is perhaps more MagSafe capabilities, because I don't know at the moment. Well, actually, I don't believe you can do data transfer through
No,
MagSafe, can you?
no. And I think the pattern here said about pogo pins or some kind of version of that
Yeah.
to allow that data transfer.
Well, imagine, on the side of the eye. Think of your iPad, where
Yeah.
the keyboard clips onto, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But you've got the free pogo pins. Is it free? You got the touch
Yeah, I
points,
think it
haven't
is.
you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So imagine that alongside MagSafe for connection. This would be. Look, I'd be down for that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love the option at least. I mean, I use my iPhone for camera everywhere. I do have a digital SLR, not an amazing one. I just don't take it anywhere. I actually have to
Well,
think about it. If I
as
can
I say,
have
yeah.
just a small compact thing I slap on the back of or case, that adds it on, that'd be great.
Well, look, you know me. I mean, I like my digital SLR. I've got my Sony. I took it out
Yeah.
when we went to see some touring car races a few weeks ago.
We did.
But I don't tend to take it out very often. I used to carry it all the time.
Yeah.
But that was a great example. But actually, if I had the same capability that I could clip onto my phone, and the features go straight into my phone library, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, exactly. Certainly should be a lot cheaper than a digital SR, and a lot lighter and more compact because the majority of the body is in the phone which you're carrying anyway. This is really just
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
a lens sensor attachment, isn't it?
Yeah, very cool. Well, like you say, I'm not sure we'll see it, but it's still a very cool idea anyway.
Yep. Next up, yeah, the Apple Vision headset. There was a.
Have you ordered yours?
No.
Okay.
I don't have the money, which leads us on to this one. Really, we haven't really heard much from it. They had the big announcement, the reveal, and it started shipping in the US, and now shipping a load more countries. But it's gone very quiet, and I think.
Well, we did have a look, didn't we? I mean, we both did have a little explore about could we, what would it do?
I can't even get the lenses for my eyes with it.
Yeah,
so it'd be pointless for me. My vision's that bad that I couldn't wear it. But yeah, I mean, Apple have. Now, well, no, they haven't announced. The rumor is they're working on what they're calling N107, isn't it? Which is a lower cost version of the Vision Pro headset. Obviously, there are going to be some trade offs. What we're seeing is a narrower field of view compared to Vision Pro. It's going to be reliant on being tethered to an iPhone or a Mac. So basically, they'll be taking the M2. Is it M2 in the Vision Pro, isn't it?
Yes,
they'll be taking the M2 out, and you'll be relying on your Mac or your iPhone to do that kind of processing there. But they're saying launch by the end of 2025. But they are struggling to get that kind of cost down, hence the tethering and stuff.
I don't think I'm too upset about this. For me, and you potentially, for most of our use cases, I know mine's slightly different to you because I drive a Mac, so I guess I'm probably more the target consumer.
Yes.
Than you are, but I don't see the problem with that. So if it's connected permanently, I've already got the power there.
Yep.
I could still drive it that way. I'd probably be sat at the desk anyway with it plugged in. Not really an issue, I guess. But it depends whether I'm going to lose capability, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose it depends on the price as well. Okay, so right, I don't have a Mac. I have an iPhone. But you guarantee I'm going to need the latest iPhone to make this work. So I've got to invest another, £1,400 in a new iPhone. And if it's Apple, you can guarantee it'll only work on the latest and it'll only work on the Pro range because that's how Apple work. So what's the cost of this headset? If this cost of this headset is, I don't know, let's say half of what's the Vision Pro? 3,500? Half of that's what? Okay, let's just say around $1,500 plus an iPhone. So I'm at 3,000 already. Well, at this point, why would I not just buy a Vision Pro?
Well, yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, exactly.
Because if it's tethered to my iPhone, I'm not really going to be doing work, which is where I might see the biggest benefit for me, I think. You know, being able to put multiple virtual displays anywhere I am and get on with some work. I need a Mac for that, really, to do actual work. Which, again, I'd then have to invest in what's a Mac Mini? 1500?
Yeah, base model, I guess. Base model's even less than that, but yeah.
But again, I'm still at the
I'm with you,
three and a half grand bit, and I'll just buy a Vision Pro instead. For me,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work out. For you already has a Mac Mini, unless they specify you're going to need one with an M4, in which case you need to buy another Mac Mini, and we're not in the same situation again.
No, it's that's the question, I guess, isn't it? But it depends who are they going to target this at, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
£500, sure, I'm all in. But when you're talking 1,500 potentially, I'm saying we don't know the pricing, we're only guessing, but the amount of sensors and high-end optics are already in there, I still think it's going to be an expensive proposition.
Yeah, no, but it gives options, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It gives options to this point.
No, I mean, if this was Apple's new AR one, which looked like a pair of glasses, and I could wear all the time, I'd probably buy it at 1,500 because it was something I'd use all day long, day-to-day life.
Yeah, no,
but I'm still not sure on the Vision Pro how much I'd actually use it.
No, I mean, for me, I'm kind of interested by it at that point, and I'm very unlikely to take the Vision Pro out and about, like the way they talk about it.
Yeah.
And I would be using it 99% of the time sat down. So
yeah,
it depends. It's definitely going to come down to where you sit within the ecosystem.
And I mean, how much more stuff's come out for the Vision Pro by that point? For Apple's
exactly.
AR, VR vision, because it's still quite light on the ground with apps and stuff at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. No. Interesting development, I have to say.
Yeah, and obviously the other part of that was they haven't abandoned the high end. There is apparently an N109 to go with that 107, which is going to be basically the Vision Pro 2. Faster processor, improved external cameras.
Well, of course there is.
Figure everything, but not come into kind of late 2026 on that one.
No. Okay, so last rumor for this week then.
Yes. Now this is a little disappointing, if I'm going to be honest. So there have been leaked schematics of the new Apple Watch Series 10 or X, depending on what you want to call that one.
Can't say X, it's 10.
It's 10. But basically, the overall design is the same as the Series 9, but you are, interestingly, going to get a huge 2-inch display on it. So the current Series 9 is, 1.7 inch? Yeah. And even the Ultra is 1.93 inches. So this is bigger display than the Ultra, but in a kind of smaller chassis. Just because it's not, obviously doesn't need to be as tough. It's not an Ultra watch. So they can basically sit it between the Series 9 size and the Ultra size. But it still is going to be increased in size of the chassis. It's a bigger watch than the 9.
So,
but there's no new watch straps, no redesign. Doesn't seem to be massively thinner. It's just bigger for a bigger display.
So this is early doors, isn't it? At the moment, we haven't really seen any massive leaks or updates about the watch really up to this point. But this is crazy because this would put then the standard watch at the same size as the current Ultra.
Bigger.
Well, but bigger.
Yeah.
The question I have for you then, and again, I know you haven't got an answer, is how big is the bloody Ultra going to be? Excuse my language.
Well, I don't know. I mean, yes, you got a larger display with the Ultra, so it was easier to see outside. But the main point of the Ultra was
battery.
It was rugged. It was the battery. It was the ruggedness. It was there's not any more sensors on it, is there? There's a better GPS, wasn't there? More accurate GPS. But the big thing was it's rugged, all terrain, take it anywhere, have the watch on your arm kind of thing, which the Series 10, 9 don't do. They're not take everywhere. They're a little less hardy, aren't they?
Look, I'm in an upgrade cycle this year for phone and watch, so I'm keen to see where we go with this. I have to say, but I'm Ultra I think is going to be more for me. But if this gets bigger and you've got a bigger case, then theoretically the battery on the standard watch should gain more
potentially, yeah. But then this is Apple; they won't do that because that would undercut the sale of the Ultra.
Yeah, well, more rumors are going to come out, I suspect, in the coming
Definitely.
weeks as we get closer to it. There's talk, isn't there, as well? Again, the new health sensors. Talk about measuring hypertension. How do they measure blood pressure? I still don't get how that's going to work. Sleep apnea as well, which I think could work because that will
Yeah.
combine the breathing and the pulse sensors. So I think that would be quite clever. So I'm up for this. Let's go. Let's see where we go with this. But more information needs to come out at the moment because as it looks, based on this, the watch looks exactly the same as the previous generation, albeit bigger.
Yeah, which isn't when we had the iPhone 10X, whatever.
That was a change.
That was a radical change of the design, wasn't it? Which was kind of what we're expecting for the anniversary edition of the watch. But no, so far the Ultra was the radical redesign, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll see.
Well, there we go. Well, that's probably a good place for us to wrap up for today. We'll be back next week for episode 173. And of course, you can find us online at techrun.online, where the show notes are and all the information, and wherever you're listening to this podcast, and of course, all on the other major platforms. And this week, we can now say we are available on YouTube. So, yes, you can find us at our YouTube channel, which is Weekly Tech Rant, and search for us on YouTube. We're there. All of the episodes now are online. All of the back catalogue is there as well. And of course, every new episode that is recorded gets automatically published to YouTube as well. And again, whilst we aren't really at that point of doing live shows just yet, we now have the opportunity to. So it's YouTube at the Weekly Tech Rant. Look out for us there. Again, please share with your friends. That'd be great. Get our subscriber numbers up. We can do more stuff. But yeah, the option is now with us to do live shows in the future. Ooh. Right then, like I say, that's all for me. I've been Jay.
I've been Karl. Have a good day all.